Hi, and welcome to Chain Reactions, a weekly live stream from XYZ, the leading global marketing network, and hosted by yours truly, Blake, and my co-host, Polina. Tune in each week as we jam on the latest happenings in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. We're live on Unlonely.app every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, and release the pod every following week on Tuesdays. Now, let's talk Chain Reactions. Clearance, ready for takeoff? All right, perfect. Yeah. Well, welcome everyone. Sorry, hold on. Let me just adjust the lighting here so my face isn't like getting all lit up. Welcome everyone. It is welcome to Chain Reactions, the Myson podcast and live stream where we talk to co-founders, leaders, and growth leaders from all around the Web3 space at some of the best projects. And today I'm Blake Kim, one of the co-founders of Myson XYZ. We got Polina. Say hi, Polina. Yeah.
Hi.
And of course we have James here, who's our guest today from Drift. James, how are you doing today?
Doing good. This is the last item on the calendar, so great way to end the day.
Yes. That's my favorite. You have like a really busy day, and at the end of it all, you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna yap for like an hour, and then I can call it.
I'm showered, I've brushed my teeth, I'm like, this is it, gonna have a really good chat and then chill out and go to bed.
It's gonna be the best, man. It's gonna be the best. Well, we're gonna try and make your time most efficient, and we'll try and make it as fun as possible. So it's worth it. But I guess to kick things off, could you kind of tell us a bit more about yourself, your background? I think you have a really unique story, and really excited to kind of dive into things. But we'll let you kind of intro yourself to kick things off.
I think story is probably the right word. I think there's a few stories in there. But yeah, so a little bit about me. So right now I'm I'm responsible for strategy and growth at Drift Protocol, which is a really big DeFi platform on Solana. So we'll talk a little bit more about Drift maybe later on. But that's basically what I'm doing at Drift. I think about it in terms of strategy is what we should do, and growth is how we actually do it and the doing. So yeah, responsible for those two streams at the moment. And I joined the Drift team maybe 3 months ago now. And before that, I was actually at KPMG in Australia for 7 years. I was on the very traditional career track, and I sort of became an accidental content creator and then ended up at Drift. So yeah, a number of stories in there, like I said, but yeah, I might stop there and let you figure out which thread you want to pull on.
I read your LinkedIn post recently. You said that you were at KPMG and then you just started to kind of dive into Web3 and then started to share your learnings in this unique format that you do. And then at some point you just couldn't ignore Web3 anymore and decided to, had a call with your manager and said, oh, that's it. It's over for me in the corporate world. I want to go full Web3. How did that, how a lot of people are very scared or want to make the transition from like Web2 careers into Web3. How did you know that this was the moment for you? Did you already had a conversation with Drift, or did you just go freelance on your own?
Yeah, so I think like I might go back even further. So I basically caught the crypto bug in 2020, at the end of 2019. And I sort of went down the rabbit hole, and this was early on in my career at KPMG. This was a couple of years in, maybe 3 years into my career. And I remember in 2021, during the lockdowns, I was walking with a friend of mine and having a conversation with him. And I was so obsessed. I remember telling him, like, I have to do something in this space. I've got no idea how, but like, I kind of knew that that's where I was going to end up. And so shortly after that, I just decided to start. I was looking around for like information sources that were reliable and like trustworthy, like high integrity stuff that wasn't like shill content. And I had a hard time finding that in 2020. And so I actually started a newsletter, and I started my own newsletter to try to like fill that gap. And I started publishing it on LinkedIn of all places because that's the only platform I knew. So I started a crypto newsletter, and sort of like over the years, I literally did this for like only stopped recently. But I did this for like 4.5 years. I was just posting this monthly newsletter, and gradually I sort of knew that either that would lead me somewhere, or the firm like KPMG would catch up to me and I would just become the person, like the crypto guy at KPMG in Australia. So I sort of thought at some point these worlds are going to converge, and I just sort of have to like just make it into existence by just trying to be useful in the space. But that's not exactly how I ended up at Drift. That's a separate story. So I can go there if you'd like. But yeah, I'll let you make the call. Yeah.
well, you have a unique way of serving this information. So you go deep and then you share your learnings in a whiteboard format. So you scribble on a whiteboard and have this, you illustrate what you're saying, basically. Was it something that you had in the beginning in mind for your content? Was it something that you just got inspired, halfway through this? What was it like?
This is where I became an accidental content creator. So about 1 year ago today, I was actually competing in ocean swimming in Australia, like open water swim races. And so my photo on Twitter is literally like me at a swim race pretty much 12 months ago today.
I was wondering what that photo was.
Yeah, that was me like just before like a race, like one of the really big races here in my wetsuit. Anyway, so I was swimming, I was competing, and I was working full time, and I was like also obsessed with crypto. So like these three things were very big pulls on my time. And swim training was basically like 6 days a week. It was like consuming my life outside of work. And then I was trying to keep up with crypto. Well, in April or March, it was March actually, in March of this year, when I was still like swimming a lot, I was actually on the way to work at KPMG, and I was crossing the road one morning in Melbourne, and it was wet and there was like lots of traffic, and there was a cyclist coming down the hill really quick that I didn't see. And I walked down in front of him and he crashed into me like really fast, and he actually injured my ribs. And I don't know if you guys are swimmers, but like you cannot swim with injured ribs. You can barely breathe or sleep or do anything without like excruciating pain.
Wait, I thought I wanted to run a marathon with broken ribs tomorrow. I didn't realize.
It's a pain. It's a pain that's like you underestimate until you experience it.
Good God.
So basically, like when I got that injury, I was like, oh crap! Like it took away a big chunk of my focus, which was my swim training, and it freed up literally more than like a third of my time. And so I thought, like, what am I going to do with this time? And so I thought, well, I'm going to dedicate this time to do what I've been wanting to do, but I haven't had the space to do, which is go deep in crypto. So it actually became like this beautiful blessing in disguise, which led me to this moment in this podcast right now. And so what I actually did was I used that time to deep dive in the Solana ecosystem. So I was already paying attention to the Solana ecosystem. And that was, I basically made a big bet that the Solana ecosystem was going to be the like consumer ecosystem of this market cycle. And I published that like prediction, like start of the year. And so I was like, this is my belief and I'm going to like back this up. And so then by chance, like that was when everything started heating up. So when I was doing my research, a lot of new eyeballs were coming to Solana, trying to understand what was going on. The first project that I got stuck on trying to understand was Sanctum. I read all of their docs like 10 times. These like random posts from the founders from like, they had these like Google Docs, you had to request access. And I read all this stuff trying to understand it because I wanted to understand it. And just reading the docs alone, I just didn't get it. I couldn't get it. And it frustrated me that I couldn't get it. So what I did was I basically said to the team, I was like, I'll do you a deal. If you help me understand this one piece, I will try and figure out a way to explain it to other people so that other people can also get it. And so they drip fed me a little bit of information. And then I took that and I sat there. I locked myself in the office on the weekend for like a full day, literally like a whole Saturday, sat in front of a whiteboard like this. And I was just like trying to figure out how I can explain visually, like how this thing actually works. And so I started drawing. Now, up until this point, I've never been a drawer. Like I didn't do this for my job at KPMG. This is like not something that's normal for me. But I started drawing and then it started making sense to me. So the whiteboard, in answer to your question, was actually a tool for me to understand. And when I started to get it, I was then able to explain it to other people. And so when the light bulbs were going off for me, I thought, well, maybe this will be useful to others. So then I did the first like big whiteboard Sanctum post, how it works. And that did really well, like better than I expected. I thought maybe like one person might find it helpful, but it was like more than one. And so then I thought, well, what's this next bit of the Sanctum puzzle that I don't understand? And so then I started like digging into that late nights and on the weekend. And then that led to the next whiteboard, and that one did even better than the first. And it sort of like snowballed out of control. And then within like maybe 2 months, I was like the whiteboard guy, and like all these people and teams were asking me to do this for their projects. And it became such a big thing in terms of that I realized there was like a fork in the road. To come back to the original question about leaving KPMG, I knew this moment would come, but I had no idea how it was going to happen. I didn't think it would be me having an injury and like not being able to swim that would lead to this, but it's like all of these things sort of like serendipitously led to David, the founder of Drift, seeing one of my whiteboard posts, seeing that I was Australian, reaching out to me, inviting me to go to Malaysia for Solana Summit in June, where I met Cindy, and then like here we are now. So it's like this very strange turn of events that you couldn't have predicted forward, but now we're here. So we're grateful for the way things turned out.
That's an absolutely crazy and beautiful journey. Honestly, I think it just goes to show like life takes some very weird twists and turns here and there, but sometimes you just got to roll with it. And it sounds like it's done quite well for you at this point. I think when we were talking about Sanctum, it was quite funny. I was like, oh, it's like exchange some alpha for a little bit of content, and then boom, here you go. So yeah, that's
what would you say, the biggest challenge, I guess, for you was first having the time to do that, then leaving KPMG to do that, making that decision, right? Was there, because it all seems like a very amazing story with like no downfalls, pretty much everything, all the pieces aligned together. Was it like this, or were there some challenges that came across the road?
Yeah, I think maybe 1 year earlier, I was really like trying to figure out if I could leave to do something different, because like I'd been 6 years at KPMG. Things were really challenging with work for me. I wasn't really enjoying it. I knew I wanted to do something in the crypto space or like do something more exciting for me. But I actually stuck it out, and I'm really glad that I did. Because I sort of have this like personal commitment to myself, which is like always end things on a positive note. Like don't leave when it sucks. Like leave on a positive, like leave on the up. And when I was looking 1 year ago to leave the firm, to leave KPMG, it wasn't the right time because it wasn't on a good note. It wasn't on the up. And so I stuck it out. I stayed the course, and then things got a lot better, and things were, it was going really well for me. Everything was sort of like falling into place. I was getting all this progression and all these great opportunities. And then it was really interesting how like I never stopped the crypto thing. And then I took that injury and like converted it into something that was useful for other people. I didn't do it so that I could get a job in crypto. I did it because like I was trying to understand, and I was just trying to create something that would be helpful to other people too. Like I went so deep. I spent so much time on those pieces of content, 30 plus hours on a single one, with no expectation of anything in return. But like what was fascinating to me was that I didn't expect it, but like that level of effort and the time and energy and attention that I put into it, like people recognize that. And then it sort of led to like where we are having the conversation now. So I think one of the challenges, it wasn't actually through that process. The challenge was actually staying the course before and trusting that things would work out. And then eventually like things did actually work out. So when I left the firm, I wasn't actually jumping into the unknown. It was teams were approaching me because the whiteboard stuff took off on Twitter. And they were asking me, I had like over 10 teams like begging for me to help them to figure out like how they should do stuff, help them do marketing, help them with their content, like do whiteboards for them, like help them do their white papers and all this kind of stuff. I had like an insane amount of inbound, which I couldn't handle. I was like overwhelmed with work and then overwhelmed with all these opportunities. And so it got to the point where there was no, like you said, like there was no downside. It was like, okay, now's the time for me to do this. Like this is the fork in the road now. Now is the right time for me to do it. So the really good thing about that was there was no hard feelings when I left. Like it was like all the partners and leaders that invested in me, that like watched me grow over the years, that helped build me up. They were like cheering me on out the door because they knew that I was leaving for the right reasons. Like they knew that I had this passion. They knew that I had the fire, and they knew that this was going to happen eventually. So it was like, yeah, it was like super wholesome on all fronts. So yeah, there were challenges beforehand, but like trusting in the process and just committing to like doing stuff that's valuable to others. I always believed that if you do things that are of value to others, like you will be rewarded in some way.
That's awesome to hear. I think it's the genuine curiosity and, the willingness to get to the granular level of the concepts, like to understand them yourself, but then at the same time just share it out without any expectation for return. That's what usually brings, because people see that it's, genuine, and then they love that. Like, we love genuine concept,
authenticity of it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the age of AI, like, you see so much of this like copy paste stuff that it's great to see a different angle to content creation. At the same time, when you left KPMG and you were overwhelmed with all this inbound, you decided to kind of lock in on Drift, right? While you could be like a freelance content creator working with multiple projects, still within the Solana ecosystem, still, feeding your curiosity through helping them with white papers, helping them with marketing, you decided to lock in on Drift. Why?
I very seriously considered doing that because I wanted to like help many teams and work on a bunch of stuff, and that was really exciting to me. But I actually met David and Cindy in June, and then I ended up joining the team in like October, and I was like working with them behind the scenes, helping them out. I went to events with them, and over that time, I actually initially, when Cindy asked me to join, I said no, like respectfully, and then I said no to David as well. And I was really honest and transparent. But over that, which wasn't my plan. I was just being like really honest. Like, I said I wanted to try freelancing. I said I wanted to take a bit of space. I said I wanted to like work on many things. And, but actually what ended up happening was when I was working with the Drift team, I actually really started to like trust them and build like a really good personal relationship with David and Cindy, and then the rest of the team. And I sort of got to a point after like 3 months where I'd spent so much time with them, and I realized like how I could help and how that my skills would actually be like valuable and my experience would be useful, and I could just see it. And I really liked them. I felt like I could trust them. So it was like the longest like hiring process of my life, which didn't even feel like a hiring process. But it turned out to be that way. And so like why I ended up making that decision was like a sense of like trust and like that personal connection, which I obviously like I just hadn't had that same time with the other teams that were sort of like reaching out. So
yeah,
it's
that
a
makes
no-brainer.
sense. Well, at KPMG you were doing data analytics, is that right?
Yeah, you've done your research. I'm impressed. So I wasn't doing whiteboards, and I wasn't doing crypto, at least in my day job, or marketing. Yeah, so what I actually did at KPMG was I worked at the intersection of like risk, so what can go wrong, and then data analytics. So like using data analytics to figure out where things are going wrong. And what I found over the years is my skill, which probably isn't going to surprise with the whiteboard, my skill was actually explaining complex things simply to like a senior audience. And so I, over time, like honed that skill as I did like technical things. I was never the best at the technical things. I found it enjoyable and fun and I liked it, but I was never the best at it. And so like as I progressed through my career there, that kind of became what I was known for. Like I was the guy that was like really good at talking with clients and explaining how things work and like delivering the insights and like doing all the presentations and all that kind of stuff. And so that actually kind of like translated really well into like the content stuff and the whiteboard piece. And I've actually completely forgot the question you asked me in the process of answering that. So you should remind me.
No, I was more so thinking about, so you did data analytics, at KPMG.
Yes.
Then you did the content piece, and now you're in this role of strategy and growth where, marketing, which is like a black box for many people for what's happening in there. Would you say that, your path as content creator and digging into how these projects, other projects in the Solana ecosystem work really helped you level up and, grow this marketer inside of you and figure out, as you were diving deeper into these projects, you kind of knew the tactics and, growth strategies that they were using so that you are able to later apply or them to Drift.
Yeah, see, what's really interesting about this is the reason why the content I was doing was working so well is because the content was for me. I'm like a normal person who's trying to understand this in like the simplest way possible. And what I found when I was researching like crypto projects, I've literally been down the rabbit hole since like 4.5 years, coming up to 5 years. And I've read so many white papers, I've listened to so many podcasts, and the same challenge over and over again is teams are so technical, they don't know how to speak to like an ordinary person. And I'm that ordinary person. Like, yeah, I did like the data analytics and stuff, but like, that's not my language. Like normal,
the crypto everyman,
like pictures,
we call it.
Yeah, exactly. Like pictures and drawings and shapes is my language. Like make it simple. And so like, yeah, what I found through that was why, like the missing link was simplified messaging. Simple. Missing link was simple. And so that's kind of what I focused on, without sort of skimming too much over the important technical bits. And I actually found that the deeper I went, couldn't actually explain things simply if I didn't understand the technicalities well enough. And so it kind of was like a realization that maybe part of the reason why there isn't a lot of like good, simple style content is because actually a lot of people that do content maybe don't understand the technical depth that well. And so maybe there is a bit of
isn't that like a quote, right? Where it's like, if you understand something, you should be able to understand it quite simply, right? Like that ability to like distill things down. It's
there is absolutely a quote there, and I've definitely heard it, but I cannot tell you who it's from or what it is. But I definitely agree with the gist of that quote. So yeah, that's basically like what I found doing the content piece. In terms of like my background, like you pointed out, Paulina, that like I didn't have that marketing background. But that's one of the things that I've found joining Drift and working in this like strategy and growth role. So I'm responsible for both, is so much of what I learned at KPMG about how we did things, not what we told other people to do, but what we actually did that worked well internally. A lot of that is very transferable to strategy, to growth, like to those more practical.
There's more. What is this internal mystery process?
There's no mystery process. There's no mystery process. But if I think about it, it's like what I think like good, like just to give an example that's practical, like Sanctum was where it started for me in terms of the Solana ecosystem, and that put me on the map. Sanctum as a team, for those who are familiar, are incredibly good at visionary messaging. They nail the strategy stuff because they abstract things into these bigger ideas and explain them simply, and they paint this vision of the future, and they are so consistent in their messaging about what that vision is and why they're doing what they're doing. That like visionary kind of like messaging for me personally resonates very well. And I find that extremely effective. Now, in my experience working at KPMG, this was something that happened. So the leadership of the firm would rotate at the top of the firm. Now, in Australia, there was like 10,000 staff in KPMG Australia. So there's a lot of, people in the food chain and a lot of people on the climbing the ladders. But every time, maybe every like 4 years, we'd get a rotation of the senior leadership. So the CEO, the chair. And one of the first things that they would do is they would spend 3 to 6 months going around talking with everyone in the business, trying to get a sense of what people were working on, where the firm was going, and like what people cared about, like what's the vision that we want to work toward. And then they would basically like create these strategies, these really simplified messages of the vision of where we're going and what we're going to focus on. And then they would hammer that messaging internally. And that gave everybody, and like on the surface, when I was a junior, I didn't really get the point. But the longer that I was around, the more I started to understand the value and the importance of that. And the value and the importance of that is, it's one of the highest leverage things you can do as a leader in a business, is set and be consistent in telling a very compelling story about a vision of where you're going and why we're going there. And the reason why that's important is because if you don't do that, how do you know that everyone's going to be sort of like going in the right direction? If you've got a team of 10,000 people across the country, it's going to be like expanding to fill the space and going in every direction at once. But if you can paint a really compelling vision, story, mission, and tell that really consistently and simply where we're going, it actually gives everybody a rudder to point and steer themselves toward. So you don't have to be involved in every decision that's made, because you've given them the tools to understand how to orient their decision towards where the firm or the team or the company or the project is going. So yeah, that's just one example of how what I learned was actually incredibly relevant to my current role, but I didn't expect it. Like that wasn't a core part of my role, but it's what I observed and I felt. and that's what I'm sort of brought to the team.
Did you feel like Drift needed to simplify its messages? Like as soon as you joined the team, what was your kind of assessment of the situation of the messaging?
I'm going to be completely honest. When I met Cindy in June, hadn't researched Drift at all. I just had a concept of what it was because I'd heard of it, but I hadn't deep dived it. And she sort of like said something to me or asked me about Drift, and I was like, I don't know what Drift is. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand it. And I was like really honest, and I was like,
for traders, not for me.
And she sort of told me, she was like, Drift is not a perps dex. Drift is this. Drift is this. Drift is this. I said to her, I was like, I had no idea. Like, my perception was that Drift was just like this one thing, and to me, like that wasn't interesting. So like, I completely just wrote it off and was like, I don't get it.
I'll be honest, that's my perception as well.
So I think this is a good opportunity to ask you, James. Can you try and
explain
Drift to us? Yeah, what is Drift? How do you explain it? Feel free to pull up the whiteboard. All good otherwise.
It's definitely on the to-do list. I've actually got like a to-do of some whiteboards of like, how do we actually explain? It's really topical for us. Like we've talked about this a lot since I joined a couple of months ago. Is like, what are we? Like, how do we say what we are? And like this, because it's like our biggest product is perps. That's where it started. Perps is like a contract for trading, and it's kind of complicated. It's not that approachable, the topic. But over time, Drift has evolved and added a borrow lend like Camino or Aave, like for those who are familiar with that, which actually is built into the protocol as well as perps. And then added a prediction market, and then added vaults. And then it's like, so it's kind of like, it's not one thing. And where Drift has evolved to today, and this is like how I'm explaining it now, is Drift is kind of like an all-in-one DeFi like hub, but it's not a centralized exchange. It's like a centralized exchange that's on chain. It's on the Solana layer 1, and it's kind of like the only thing that actually is that. So people right now kind of perceive Drift as just like a perp dex, and then they look at things like Hyperliquid, for example, which is like really successful in the perp space at the moment, and sort of compare Drift to that. But it's like Drift is actually a much bigger concept than just a perp dex, because Drift being an all-in-one platform means that other teams can actually build stuff on top of Drift. It means that when you use one of Drift's product, you actually get the benefits of all the other products, because when you deposit into the borrow lend, you get really high interest rates on your deposits because perp traders are speculating. You don't have to do anything. That's all happening in the back end because it's an all-in-one solution. So yeah, Drift right now is like this big super protocol is the word that Multicoin use, which is like our biggest investor, and they've just held their summit. They frame us up as a DeFi super protocol. We're exploring internally right now, like how do we better tell that story and explain what we are? So Cindy, who's the founder or co-founder and CEO, she's just released a 3-phase roadmap, which has recently been worked on since I joined. And that sort of explains that the journey that Drift's on is phase 1 is building the infrastructure. That's where we are now. And the core app, which is app.drift.trade. Phase 2 is like, how do we reach a broader audience? And that's where we're looking at things like, how do we do mobile? How do we make Drift like way more accessible? Perps, you'll lose half the audience immediately when you say that word. Like, what is that? It's complicated. I don't understand. Like, scary. Like, go away. We're looking at like, how do we solve for that? So like, how do we do mobile better? How do we lean into things that are more intuitive and understandable, like vaults, like earn, and really make it better, a simple experience, kind of grow the pie for our users. And then finally, phase 3 of the roadmap is where other teams are building on top of Drift, utilizing the infrastructure that we've built. And like fintechs use Drift in the back end to do all of their on-chain settlement and all that on Solana. Because we basically believe that Solana will be the home of all assets in the future. So we believe that the future is on-chain assets. We believe that Solana will be the home for that. And given that Drift is the only on-chain super protocol on Solana, Drift will be the home for all of those assets, which means trading, swaps, perps, and vaults, everything built on top. So that's the really big picture of what we're building toward.
You're talking longer term. There's an aspiration to kind of do almost like a B2B, like API protocol layer for, are we talking TradFi, or we're talking like other people trying to just build on top of Solana, or it might be both?
talking TradFi, talking both.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's big plans, big vision, and yeah, it's exciting. It's not what I thought it was when I first met Cindy in June, in short.
I'm curious in that messaging, because you have a vision that comes from internal, right, from the team that's there. So applying the practices that you had at KPMG, but then you also have power users, right, super users, and the way that they perceive drift might be different. So I'm wondering if asking those power users of how they see drift was something that you took on when you joined, to really understand what's the perception like from the community as well, not just internally.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to listen to users. And like shortly after I joined, maybe 1 month after I joined, we got some really harsh feedback from a power user, and it was totally warranted. Like, it was super fair, and they were really like generous to give us the feedback. Like, feedback is a gift. And they took the time out of their day. They didn't just leave and complain. They were like, I'm frustrated, here's why. And it really shone a spotlight on how we were handling sort of like customer support, how we were actually like capturing and then creating a feedback loop from product feedback from power users, and like using that to improve the product and make it better, basically. So like that loop wasn't working as effectively as it should have been. And there were like breakdowns going on in that loop. And so, yeah, I spent with the team like quite a bit of time going through all of the Discord tickets. Like, we set up a process. We implemented process, which is what we used to do at KPMG, right? So like, that's more, again, like where my experience comes in. Here's what it should look like. Here's what here's what management of these things looks like from my experience. Here's what it should
many transferable skills. We love it. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Again, not data analytics, but definitely learned that one back at the firm. So anyway, applying that, like, that revealed a lot to us about where we can do things better. And we're actually looking at currently, from all of this like feedback that we've been gathering, all of these complaints, all these issues, and this isn't like the drift is on fire. You always get tickets. You always get people sort of like, where's my deposit? How's this work? Like, and it's like, that is such it's such a rich source of information for like, because people don't create those tickets when there's not a pain point. So it's like every ticket is like a really valuable pain point for a user that it's like, there's gold in it. And so what we're doing now is we're actually aggregating all of those into like themes, and we're looking at sort of like how we can address some of those things. One of them is product, like fixing the product, and another is education. So in short, we're looking at how we can do content and education of things based on that. So listening to our users, using it to make the product better, and then helping educate users. And the other part, to answer your question, sorry, because I've realized I've sort of answered a different question you asked me. We're actually looking at like I said, like mobile, doing that better is coming. And so we've just got a new head of product in recently. And so yeah, he's in the same team as myself. And what we've been doing is talking with sort of like power users and getting feedback on the product and trying to figure out what is important, what isn't important, and using that to sort of scope up how we can do mobile better.
I think that's a common problem, to be honest, because everyone always says, talk to your community, ask for feedback. And, speaking from the community side of things, I usually see those things and then I pass them on to the team. And then it's like a black box of, okay, we'll put it in our roadmap. Okay, we'll put it in our to-do list, right? And then a lot of the times it happens that it gets deprioritized, it gets lost. Like, the sort of communication between product and marketing teams is not always there and not always dialed in. And asking for feedback and acting on feedback is a very big piece if you want to keep your community engaged. So I'm really curious about, maybe a bit more detail of how you set up that process, and just for a bit of background, how big is actually the team that's involved in this? Because the scale, we don't know the scale of the team, how many people are in this mechanism that's working.
So it's pretty lean. So basically we've got 2 Discord mods, and they help us triage, and then we've got 1 team member in my growth team who has helped set up this process with me. I've sort of set it out. He's executed it. And he now manages the 2 Discord mods. we've set up like a register for every single ticket, every single complaint, like everything goes in that register, and we use that to track, monitor, to categorize, and make sure that things actually get closed down. So, because not everything is a Discord ticket. And what we do is we actually then triage. A lot of things don't need to go to the devs. A lot of things don't need to go to product. So we aggregate and triage. So for things that do need to go to the devs, for something's broken or there's an issue with the UI, or like, someone's account's not registering a balance and we need to like technically go in and figure out what's happening, that'll get like handled straight away to the dev team, and they're like ready to go to go investigate those things. But for a lot of the other stuff, that's sort of resolved by sort of like 2 mods and one guy in my team who's an absolute legend. His name is Min. So if you do listen to this, Min, you are not going unnoticed. You're a superstar.
Shout out to Min.
Shout out to Min. Min is an absolute hero. And one thing we're also doing, which going to sort of reveal the hand here, we basically, when I said that power user gave us like some really tough feedback, which was totally warranted, one of the key things that this person said was like that they felt like we didn't care, like that the team didn't care. And that was really like, it was like emotional. Like it struck a nerve. It struck a nerve of the founders. It's like, you guys don't care. And obviously like, it was pretty upset when he said that. And it made us realize like, wait, we're not actually prioritizing this. We don't have like a good process here. That actually does tell our users that we don't care. So like, we're like immediately like, we need to fix this and like make this our top priority. So we did. And so what we do is we actually, when we find these users who take the time to give us this feedback, we're like creating these direct channels that this Min in the team is sort of like managing with the key team members that need to be a part of that conversation and that super user, power user directly. So they've got a direct line with the team. They tell us like what challenges, and we just debug stuff in real time. And that first user that gave us sort of like that really challenging feedback, that user has now built vaults on top of Drift that other people are depositing into. So he's now running an entire like business on top of Drift, basically, in our new vaults that we launched like a few months ago. And is like one of our biggest champions. So like that person has gone from being a detractor to an absolute advocate, because we like took the time to like turn that ship around and really focus and listen and address those concerns.
That's really cool, and that shows that in Web3 there's not really like, it's easy to get involved if you want to get involved, if you're willing to spend the time on something and have the best intentions. I saw I think Cindy posted about the vaults just recently. It looks like an amazing and cool feature, so I everyone should check it out. But tell us, as we're sort of getting to the end of things, what's cooking at Drift? What are your like sort of top priorities right now?
I mean, this is super timely, like this question. Literally today, I had multiple meetings with like the leadership team around like priorities and like what's the most important thing. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit because I've been, you can basically do anything, but you can't do everything. Like you have limited amount of time, you have to choose what to do. Like no matter what, you always have to prioritize. Like that's kind of like a fact of the universe, right? And I was thinking a lot about this over the weekend. I sort of came to the conclusion today that there are like 2 key things that are like the top of the priority list for us. The first is improving liquidity on the platform. So what that means is like, if we launch a new market, like a new perps market, and like, perps are like these contracts to trade. If we like list a new market on Drift, if somebody shows up, like Pengu was a big one today. If a big user shows up and they want to like put on a trade, there has to be like market makers on the other side who are ready to provide liquidity and want to provide liquidity to that market, which is very volatile and risky from a volatility perspective to a market maker. They've got to be there and willing to sort of like provide that liquidity. So we can list it, but like Drift as a marketplace, it's a 2-sided business. There's the supply side, the market makers, and then there's the demand side, the takers, the users, the traders. And so we have been probably one of the biggest challenges and like points of critical feedback that we faced is like Drift needs to improve liquidity. But liquidity is like a tricky problem because there's technical aspects to improving liquidity, like technical meaning writing software code to make it better. And then there's also like how do you get market makers to want to trade on Drift? Like that's kind of like a non-technical problem to solve. So that's our number one like priority at the moment is how do we improve liquidity on Drift so that when people show up to trade and use Drift and try Drift, they can because there's liquidity on the order books. So that's like the number one thing. And we have 2 really, really big technical upgrades coming on this front, which I'm anticipating will be like Q1, so like pretty soon. We believe that they're going to be massive for improving liquidity on Drift. Like they're going to be very, very big updates. Huge things coming there. So we pray that some of the technical things the devs are working through can get resolved. Because when that launches, that is going to be massive for us and for our users. Users are going to get better fills. They're going to get faster execution on their trades, going to get better prices. Like it's going to be better for everyone. Market makers will have a better experience. It's going to be way better. So that's like the number one. And then number 2, for those of you who have used Drift, we launched Fuel. And Fuel is like a points program on Drift. And we've been having the questions when Fuel for a long time now, because Drift launched the token in May of this year. And so like these Fuel points have been sort of accumulating and people are like, well, you know, when? Tell me about Fuel. And we haven't really like clearly articulated Fuel. So that's the other top priority at the moment is there's things coming on the Fuel front and I'm responsible for them. So they're coming. That's the alpha.
No
Fuel
pressure.
soon.
Fuel soon. And then how do you balance, kind of going back to the original, I think, description of Drift, right? And kind of being this, like the super app, I guess, for DeFi and everything else and this protocol. How are you thinking about the perps versus prediction markets? Like what's going on there? And then all the other stuff that's cooking. How is that being balanced? And also, I'm kind of curious, like what's the big, as you're thinking about all these updates coming, the marketing, the content, all that stuff coming up in the new year. How are you thinking about all that? Yeah.
So we've worked on a couple of marketing strategies and plans recently, which I've been involved in. And I think like the key piece of alpha that I'm willing to say here is like, I think across the board, video is underutilized. We're looking at video and how we can like lean into that. Like I'm a big video consumer on other platforms for like crypto Twitter. Video is like woefully underutilized. So that's something that I'm looking at that we're exploring. So potentially that you can expect video potentially as part of that on the marketing side. But beyond that, we've got a gun marketing resource called Anne, who is really, really like putting the work in on the marketing front. And as we're sort of like planning for next year, we've got really big things planned. I don't want to give too much away because like I want to like do it properly.
Fair.
But yeah, we're going to be doing more and we're going to be being clearer in our messaging and we're going to do a better job at showing people, not just telling, but showing how Drift is more than just a perp stack.
Are you thinking like just a bit more into the video question? Are you thinking from the perspective of, someone internal from the team actually like building out this team brand? Or are you thinking of just getting a content creator that would be, more familiar with how to do videos great, with how to be great on camera, to do videos, together with the team, but just one face for the brand?
I mean, I'm personally of the opinion that I like the human element of life. Like I like people. Like I'm the kind of person I've always been oriented toward people in everything that I've done. Always been a people person. So like a team, when I can like feel a sense of connection with the people behind a brand, like the team, I personally find that like that builds trust and conviction and belief in me as a person with that team. Not the brand, not the logo, but the team behind the logo. So as we explore what this could look like for us, I kind of want to lean into that a bit more. So to date, we haven't been that open. Like Cindy's very out in the open. David's pretty out in the open as well. But then beyond that, we're not very out in the open as a team. And I'm looking at maybe like doing a bit more there. So in answer to your question, we are a pretty lean team. There's about 25 of us across the board. Like that's engineering and non-dev. For a big protocol, we've got around 1 billion in TVL. We do like hundreds of millions of daily volume on perps. Like it's a really big thing for a really small team, like on a relative basis compared to like the previous world that I've come from. So when doing things like video, for example, like we'll be looking at our options to like get some good support where needed, as opposed to, you know, me doing it all on my own, for example. I'll definitely be involved, but yeah, whiteboarding. Don't worry. Like I literally got this one set up yesterday. I just moved house, so I got a new whiteboard. So there'll be whiteboards. Don't you worry.
It should be drift branded.
Explaining the strategy to the team first, and then just using that.
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something. I just spent 4 weeks in the US with the team, like the leadership team who are in the US. So I was in New York for 4 weeks. And I must have done 10 whiteboard sessions with the team where I was like drawing these like big elaborate diagrams. I must have done 10 over the 4 weeks that I was there, all internal, like just trying to like figure stuff out together. And that was awesome. It definitely scratched the whiteboard itch for me, but it's time now that I'm back in Australia and I'm not with the team to start doing some whiteboards and sharing it with the world. So right now the priorities, like I said, liquidity is the top. Answering the fuel question is the second, really working on these two things. That's the focus at the moment. But there's a lot of content downstream of those things. And I've got a fresh whiteboard that's ready for a workout. So yeah,
the
TBC.
world is waiting. The world is excited.
I realized that after you announced that you're joining Drift in September, you kind of stopped posting. So I was thinking maybe there's just so much work that your content creator life just kind of came to an end. That era has ended and you started to prioritize other things. But now it makes sense that you say that you were in US traveling and that just sort of took priority.
Yeah, I was doing it behind the scenes, let's say, just not publicly.
Then we have only a far round of questions left. If you want, Blake, you can shoot them over to James.
Yeah.
The quick fire round.
Yeah, James, we are coming up on time, so I think we'll kind of transition. But actually, real quick before that, is there anything else you kind of want to mention, bring up, or any other alpha you want to share with the squad? I feel like you've kind of talked a lot about all the things coming up, but just making sure.
I think I've covered the bases. I don't want to give too much away. But no, it's been a good chat. So yeah, grateful. If you've got one fire round, one or two, probably do those. Squeeze them in.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, well, it's pretty straightforward. Just like 4 questions, real quick. So what do you think is the most underrated marketing tactic in Web3 right now?
It's fire round. So I'm going to say video. I'm just going to say video. Video is underdone.
Yeah, video.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Overrated. Yep. What's overrated?
I think like shill threads. Shill threads are overrated. Yeah. Don't rate them.
Right,
like airdrop farming threads, that sort of stuff. Like that's what I mean.
It happens all the time. So get those on my timeline. We need lots of them.
Yeah.
What crypto brands are actually crushing on social? And it can't be Drift because obviously,
I really think the two for me, one is Jupiter because they just have such an engaged community. Like it's a beautiful thing. Like it's incredible what they've cultivated. So full props and respect to that team. And the other for me on socials is Hyperliquid, and not because, again, it's because of the evangelism of the users. Like they've built a great product that people love, and because of that, like people just like sing the praises to the world. So I think they're crushing. Like if you do something right, people want to talk about it. And so that's what I'm saying. I think, those teams are crushing it.
Great answers all around. Yeah, we had Soju on from Jupiter a couple months ago. We were talking about community building, really great stuff. And I think Hyperliquid, I kind of feel like they're taking almost like this phantom-like approach when it comes to like UX, UI, and just getting people to evangelize. So amazing stuff.
Well, hey, whatever they're doing, it's working.
Yeah. But they don't have all the other stuff that Drift does, right? So there we go.
Well, that's exactly right. Like people go, oh, like this is a competitor or that's a competitor. I'm like, it's in a sense, yes, but like we're trying to do something really big. So like I'm really not like that worried in the short term.
Think bigger.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
Perfect. And then the last one here is worst marketing advice you see being pushed in crypto.
Actually, don't pay any attention to marketing advice. I literally don't have an answer to that question.
Wow. He's too busy doing his own thing. Stay in your lane.
I
just
literally
focus,
do my
grind.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, I'm into that. And then I'm
Yep.
actually gonna have one more here. This is a personal favorite from a couple, the many times we've done this is as we're reaching the end of the year, end of 2024, when you think back to this year and all the crazy stuff you've been through, what do you feel like is your biggest professional learning from 2024?
I think it's tell the truth, like be really, really honest and truthful with your intentions. Like sometimes it's tempting to cover up and be defensive but like the best things that happened for me this year professionally was just like me opening the heart and just like being really honest and truthful with people. It led to really good things for me. And it just built so much trust, like personally and professionally. So I think, tell the truth.
I love that. We all need a little more truth in crypto, so it's always helpful and keeps things professional.
Agree. Big agree.
Perfect. Well, I think that's it for today then. I know it's quite late over there for you, so I don't want to keep you up too much longer, but really appreciate you hopping on, James. I guess the last thing is real quick, where can people find you? Where should people check out? What should people be keeping their eyes on as we reach the holidays and go into the new year? Yeah.
Keep your eyes on Drift, definitely. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter. So my handle is James Lee Hanley. So I think probably it should be here somewhere.
Yeah.
Find me on Twitter if you want to follow me for crypto stuff. If you want to see my embarrassing LinkedIn content, you can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'm a little bit less active on LinkedIn though, so maybe Twitter's better.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that, I will say thank you so much, James. Polina, you have any final words?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great episode. Thanks so much, James, for sharing, the inner workings of Drift and also the plans for the future, also in as much detail as you could. So it was definitely going to keep our eyes on Drift. And thanks for joining.
I'm going to have to go play around.
And thanks everyone who was online with us.
Thanks, Blake. Thanks, Paulina. Nice to chat.
All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks so
Cheers.
much.
Bye.
All right. Ciao, ciao.